The drumbeat stopped suddenly, and in that sharp silence, a single cry broke the air, the cry of a woman whose shame had been spoken louder than her name. Every head inside the old mud-walled church turned at once, because in that moment, something holy had been broken. The sun pushed its hot fingers through the open windows, dust floated like spirits in the air, and Pastor Maliko's voice stood tall and cold, heavy with power, as if it could crush a soul by sound alone. "You cannot stay here," he said, pointing at the trembling woman. "This house is clean. Your condition brings disgrace." Those words fell like stones, and no prayer followed them. Amahle stood in the center aisle, her hands wrapped around her swollen belly, her feet bare against the cracked floor. Her faded dress clung to her thin body, and sweat ran down her face, mixing with tears she could not stop. She was young, not more than 20, but life had already bent her back. Her eyes searched the room, hoping to find one face of mercy, one voice to defend her. She saw only lowered eyes, stiff mouths, and women who pulled their children closer as if shame could jump like fire. This church was the pride of the village of Ndlovu. Built with donations from rich traders and blessed by powerful men, it stood higher than the nearby huts. Inside, the benches were polished, the altar cloth white, and the pastor's robe bright like royalty. Pastor Maliko was known far beyond the village. He drove a fine car, ate from silver plates, and spoke about holiness with a voice that made people afraid to breathe wrong. To many, he was God's mouth. To Amahle, he was now the door closing on her last hope. She had walked 3 hours that morning, one hand on her belly, the other holding a small cloth bag with nothing inside but fear and faith. She believed the church was a place where broken people were held, not pushed away. When the service began, she had sat quietly at the back, praying in silence, begging God to protect her unborn child. But whispers had moved faster than prayer. By the time the final song ended, her secret was no longer hers. "Leave," Pastor Maliko said again, louder now, so the whole church could hear. "Come back when you have cleaned your life." The elders nodded slowly. Some men clicked their tongues. A woman laughed nervously, then stopped when others glared. No one spoke for Amahle. No one stood beside her. As she turned to walk, her legs shook. Each step felt like walking away from life itself. When she reached the door, she stumbled, and for a moment, it seemed she would fall. Still, no one moved. The church doors closed behind her with a dull sound that echoed in her chest. Outside, the world felt wider and crueler. The sun burned her skin. The church bell rang again, calling people back into song, into comfort, into forgetting. Amahle took 2 steps and collapsed on the dusty ground. Her body curled around her belly, protecting the life inside her, while her sobs rose like smoke into the air. Near the church gate, under the shade of a dying mango tree, sat a man no one noticed. His clothes were torn, his hair matted with dust, his feet cracked and dry. He smelled of earth and old rain. The children called him mad. The elders called him useless. The rich called him invisible. His name was Kofi. Kofi had been sitting there long before the church drums began. He had watched people arrive in fine clothes, had listened to songs about love and mercy, and had felt the familiar sting of being unseen. When the pastor's voice turned sharp and cruel, Kofi lifted his head. His eyes, though tired, were clear. He saw Amahle fall, and something deep inside him stirred, something old and painful and strong. While the church continued as if nothing had happened, Kofi slowly stood up. People passing by frowned at him. One man waved him away, afraid he would disturb the holy place. But Kofi did not care. He walked toward Amahle, his steps calm, his shadow stretching long on the ground. Amahle looked up through tears and saw him standing there. Fear crossed her face. Even the homeless were known to avoid pregnant women with shame. But Kofi did not look at her belly with judgment. He looked at her face. "Daughter," he said softly, his voice rough but gentle, "the ground is too hard for tears like yours." He removed his torn cloth and placed it under her head. He sat beside her, blocking the sun with his body. From his pocket, he pulled out a small piece of bread, broken and dry, and held it out. Inside the church, Pastor Maliko lifted his hands and spoke about love, about forgiveness, about God's kindness. His voice floated out through the open windows, but his words did not reach the ground where Amahle lay. Some villagers watched from a distance, whispering. "Why is that madman helping her?" someone said. "He should leave her. Her shame will follow him." But Kofi did not move. He sat like a guard at a sacred place. As Amahle ate slowly, her sobs softened. For the first time that day, she felt seen. She did not know this man. She did not know that the village had not always known him like this. She did not know that the eyes watching her now had once seen much more than dust and rejection. The church song rose louder, covering the sound of pain outside. But something had already changed. A seed had been planted in the dirt, watered by tears and kindness. And if you are listening to this story, do not turn away yet. Stay with us till the end, because what happened next will shake this village and reveal a truth no one expected. Subscribe to this channel, like this story, and walk with us through every breath of this tale, because in Africa, stories are not just told, they are lived. Under the mango tree, a homeless man and a rejected woman sat together, while inside the house of worship, truth waited patiently to rise. Night fell slowly over Ndlovu village, not all at once, but like a tired blanket being pulled over wounded ground. The sky turned deep orange, then purple, and finally dark, while the smell of cooking fires filled the air. Families gathered in their homes, laughter and voices moving from hut to hut. But outside the village center, near the old path where travelers once passed, Amahle sat beneath the mango tree with Kofi, wrapped in silence and fear. After the church people went home, no one returned to check on her. Even those who had watched from far earlier chose to forget. Amahle's body ached, her back stiff, her feet swollen from walking. The baby inside her moved, and each movement reminded her of how alone she was. She pressed her hands against her belly and whispered soft words her grandmother once taught her, prayers mixed with old village songs meant to protect life. Kofi remained close but did not crowd her. He understood silence. He had lived with it for many years. When the air grew cold, he rose and gathered dry leaves and small sticks. With careful hands, he made a small fire. The flame danced weakly, but its warmth felt like mercy. Amahle watched him, surprised by the care in his actions. "Thank you," she said at last, her voice barely louder than the wind. Kofi nodded. "The night is long for those who carry heavy hearts," he replied. "Fire reminds us we are still alive." Amahle stared into the flames, and her tears returned, this time slower, deeper. "They looked at me like I was dirt," she said. "Like I chose this shame." Kofi poked the fire gently. "People fear what reminds them of their own secrets," he said. "So they throw stones instead of truth." Amahle looked at him then, really looked at him. His face was lined, his beard grey with dust, but his eyes were sharp, full of knowing. He did not speak like a madman. He spoke like someone who had seen the inside of many hearts. She swallowed and spoke again, her words breaking. "I have nowhere to go. My grandmother died last year. The woman I worked for sent me away when my belly grew. I thought the church would help me." Her voice cracked, and she bent forward, holding her stomach as if afraid it would split open from sorrow. Kofi reached out slowly and placed his hand on the ground near hers, not touching, just close enough to say she was not alone. "Rest here tonight," he said. No one will chase you from under the open sky. The wind moved through the mango leaves, and the fire popped softly. For a while, they said nothing. Then Amahle began to remember, and memories came like rain after drought. She spoke of her childhood, of growing up poor but loved, of her grandmother's stories about dignity and truth. She spoke of working in the houses of the rich, washing clothes she would never wear, cleaning floors she could never own. She spoke of the day everything changed, though she did not yet speak the full truth. Her eyes grew dark when she mentioned the man who smiled too much and promised help. Kofi listened without interruption. Each word settled inside him like a stone placed carefully on a path he already knew. Far away, in a large house near the church, Pastor Maliko sat at a wide table covered with food. His wife served him, his children laughed, and visitors praised his sermon. They spoke about discipline, about keeping the church clean. Maliko smiled and nodded, his heart calm, his hands full. He did not think of Amahle. Or if he did, he pushed the thought away like an unwanted dream. Back under the mango tree, Amahle's stomach tightened suddenly. She gasped and grabbed her side. "Breathe," Kofi said calmly. "The child is only turning. Fear makes pain grow." She followed his words, breathing slowly until the pain eased. She stared at him in surprise. "How do you know these things?" she asked. Kofi looked into the fire. "Life teaches those who listen," he said. Later, when the fire burned low, Kofi pointed toward a broken shrine not far from the tree. It was old, cracked, and forgotten, once used by travelers for rest and prayer. "You can sleep there," he said. "It will block the wind." Amahle hesitated. "What about you?" "I sleep with the stars," he replied gently. As she lay down on the hard ground, sleep did not come easily. Thoughts chased each other in her mind. Shame, fear, anger, and a small, stubborn hope she did not want to name. She wondered why a stranger cared when those who called themselves holy did not. Before sleep took her, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" Kofi did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. "Because once, long ago, I watched a woman suffer while people like me stayed silent. I promised myself never again." The next morning, the village woke early. Amahle stepped into the light with swollen eyes and a tired body. She washed her face at the river while women stared and whispered. Some children pointed at her belly and laughed. One woman spat on the ground as she passed. At the market, Amahle tried to ask for work, but doors closed quickly. People did not want her shame near their goods. Hunger returned, sharp and biting. When she turned back toward the mango tree, she saw Kofi standing in the middle of the market, his voice raised for the first time. A group of young men surrounded him, mocking. "Why do you defend that woman?" one shouted. "Is her sin now yours?" Kofi stood straight. "A village that throws away its mothers throws away its future," he said. People froze. Some laughed, but others went silent. His words hung in the air like thunder waiting to strike. Amahle felt something shift inside her. Fear mixed with awe. This homeless man was not afraid. And if you are still listening, stay with us. What Kofi does next will bring the hidden truth into the open and shake the church itself. Do not forget to subscribe and remain till the end, because the next chapter carries the secret that was buried in silence. The market buzzed again, but something had already begun to crack, and once truth begins to crack the ground, nothing can stop what rises next. The words Kofi spoke in the market did not disappear with the noise of the crowd. They followed Amahle like an echo as she walked back toward the mango tree, her heart beating fast, her thoughts heavy. People stared at her differently now. Some still mocked her, but others looked away, as if they had seen something they were not ready to face. The village of Ndlovu had heard many loud voices, but few spoke with calm strength, and Kofi's words had carried weight. Amahle sat on a fallen log and pressed her hands against her belly. The baby kicked gently, and she breathed out slowly. She felt tired, not only in body but in spirit. Every step she took felt like walking against a strong wind. Still, something new lived inside her, something small but bright, like a candle protected by cupped hands. Kofi joined her after some time. He handed her a calabash with water. "Drink," he said. "Your body carries two souls now." She drank and then looked at him, her eyes filled with questions she had been afraid to ask. "Why do you speak like someone who knows this village better than anyone?" she asked. "You speak of mothers, of futures, like they matter to you." Kofi sat down slowly, his knees cracking as if they remembered younger days. "This land remembers all our footsteps," he said. "Some of mine are deeper than others." Amahle wanted to push him for answers, but fear held her tongue. Instead, her own truth began to rise, pushed by pain and the safety she strangely felt near him. "It was not love," she said suddenly, her voice shaking. "This child did not come from love." Kofi did not turn to look at her, but his jaw tightened. "I worked in the big house near the church," Amahle continued. "The one with the tall fence and the red gate. I cleaned floors and washed clothes. One day, I fell sick, and he said he would help me. He said God helps those who trust his servants." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I trusted him." Her hands began to shake. Tears fell onto the dust. "When I told him about the child, he changed. He said the church must be protected. He said I would destroy everything if I spoke." Kofi closed his eyes. He did not ask for the name. He did not need to. "I went to him again," Amahle said. "I begged him to help me. He gave me money and told me to leave the village. When I refused, he said I was a sinner and must face the consequences." The wind blew hard, carrying her words into the trees. Amahle felt as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her chest, even though the truth hurt. Kofi opened his eyes. "The truth is like a drum," he said quietly. "You can bury it, but one day, someone will beat it." Amahle looked at him, surprised. "You speak like you have walked this road before." Kofi stood up and began to pace slowly. "Once," he said, "this church was not like this." He pointed toward the building in the distance, its roof shining under the sun. "Long ago, before gold and pride entered its walls, it was a place of healing. I helped build it with my own hands." Amahle's breath caught. "You," she whispered. Kofi nodded. "I was a teacher, a man people respected. I believed faith was a shelter, not a weapon. But when power arrived, truth was asked to sit outside." Amahle stared at him, her heart racing. The homeless man before her did not match the picture in her mind. "What happened to you?" Kofi's face darkened. "I spoke when others stayed silent," he said. "I questioned leaders. I asked where compassion had gone. They called me a rebel. They stripped me of my name, my place, my work. I lost everything except my eyes." Amahle felt tears rise again, this time not from shame but from understanding. "So you chose to live like this?" "I chose to stay where lies do not hide behind clean clothes," Kofi replied. "On the ground, truth has no mask." As the day passed, whispers grew stronger. People in the village spoke of the madman who challenged shame. Some were angry. Others were afraid. The elders met quietly. Pastor Maliko heard the rumors and frowned. His peace was disturbed. He sent a young deacon to find Kofi and warn him to stay quiet. The deacon found Kofi near the river, washing his hands. "The pastor says you should mind your place," the young man said. "You are stirring trouble." Kofi looked at him calmly. Water does not mind its place when it is thirsty land, he replied. The deacon left, confused and uneasy. That evening, Amahl's pain returned stronger. She cried out as her body tightened. Kofi helped her sit, speaking softly, guiding her breathing. Villagers passed by, some stopping, some pretending not to see. No one offered help. Amahle grabbed Kofi's arm. I am afraid, she whispered. What if they hurt you because of me? Kofi smiled gently. Truth always hurts those who fear it, he said. But fear cannot protect a life forever. As night fell, Amahle slept fitfully. In her dreams, the church walls cracked, and light poured out. She woke suddenly to the sound of footsteps. A group of men stood at a distance, watching. Their faces were hard. One spat on the ground. That woman brings curses, he said. Kofi stood between them and Amahle without raising his voice. Curses grow where justice is buried, he said. The men hesitated. Something in his calm frightened them. They left with angry words but empty hands. If you are still with this story, do not leave now. The silence is about to break. In the next chapter, the man everyone ignored will walk into the house of power, and what he says they will turn faith into fire. Subscribe, stay, and listen closely, because the truth is standing at the church door. Sunday returned like a drumbeat that could not be stopped. From early morning, the village of Ndlovu moved toward the church in slow streams of color and sound. Women wrapped in bright cloth balanced baskets on their heads. Men wore pressed shirts and polished shoes. Children ran ahead, laughing. The church bell rang again and again, calling everyone to gather, to forget, to feel clean. Amahle stood near the old shrine with Kofi, watching from a distance. Her belly was heavier now, her steps slower. Fear sat in her chest like a trapped bird. She had decided to leave the village before the service ended. She could no longer carry the weight of eyes and whispers. She tied a small cloth bag and looked once more at the church, wondering how a place meant for healing could leave wounds so deep. Kofi watched her quietly. Before you go, he said, let me walk once more into that house. Amahle turned to him in shock. They will chase you away, she whispered. They hate you now. Kofi nodded. Yes, he said. But hatred is loud because truth is near. As the drums began inside, Kofi straightened his back and brushed the dust from his clothes as best he could. Together, they walked toward the church. People stared as they passed. Murmurs rose like flies. Some laughed. Some pointed. Others felt a strange tightening in their chests they did not understand. At the church door, two elders blocked Kofi's path. You cannot enter, one said. This place is not for people like you. Kofi looked at the door, then at the men. This door was built with the hands of many, he said calmly. It was never meant to be owned by fear. Before they could answer, Kofi stepped forward. The elders hesitated, then stepped aside, uneasy. Amahle remained outside, her heart pounding as she watched him disappear inside. The church was full. Pastor Maliko stood at the altar, his robe shining, his voice strong as he spoke about purity and obedience. When Kofi walked down the center aisle, the room stirred. Laughter broke out. A woman covered her nose. A man whispered loudly, has madness now entered the house of God? Pastor Maliko paused. His eyes locked on Kofi, and for a brief moment, fear flashed across his face before he masked it with anger. Who let this man in? He demanded. Kofi stopped a few steps from the altar. He did not bow. He did not shout. He simply stood. I have come to tell a story, he said. The church murmured again. In African tradition, stories were powerful. Even elders knew that to stop a story was to fear its end. Pastor Maliko forced a smile. "This is not the time," he said sharply. Kofi raised his hand slowly. "A story takes only a few breaths," he said. "If it is false, throw me out." Something in his voice held the room. Pastor Maliko hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "Speak," he said. "But be quick." Kofi began. There was once a village that built a well so everyone could drink. Over time, the men who guarded the well began to drink first and pour dirt into the cups of the weak. When a woman came thirsty, they blamed her for being dirty. Silence fell. People shifted on their benches. The woman carried life inside her, Kofi continued. Instead of water, she was given shame. The guards said the well must be protected, not the people. A few women gasped. Amahle's name was not spoken, but her face appeared in many minds. Pastor Maliko clenched his fists. "Enough," he said. "This man speaks nonsense." Kofi turned to him for the first time. "Then answer me," he said. "Who dirted the water?" The room froze. Kofi reached into his torn cloth and pulled out a small folded paper. "This woman came to you," he said, his voice steady. "She begged for help. Instead, she was given money and silence." Whispers spread like wildfire. Pastor Maliko's face flushed. "Lies," he shouted. "Bring proof or leave." Kofi unfolded the paper. It was a receipt, old but clear, bearing the pastor's name. Then he spoke names. Dates. Places. Each word landed like a drumbeat. People stood up. Some cried out. Others covered their mouths. "The child she carries was not made by sin," Kofi said. "It was made by abuse of power." Amahle, listening outside, fell to her knees, sobbing. The truth was no longer hers to carry alone. Pastor Maliko's voice shook. "Throw him out," he screamed. But no one moved. An elder stepped forward slowly. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice breaking. Pastor Maliko opened his mouth, but no words came. At that moment, Amahle cried out in pain. Her body bent forward as a sharp contraction seized her. Women rushed to her side outside the church. Inside, Kofi raised his voice one last time. "A house that throws out truth will collapse under lies," he said. "If you are listening, stay with us. The storm has entered the house, and the birth of truth has begun." Subscribe to this channel and remain till the end, because the next chapter carries judgment, tears, and the fall of the proud. The drums stopped. The silence this time was not holy, it was afraid. Chaos spread through the church like fire through dry grass. Voices rose from every corner, loud and confused. Some people shouted in anger, others cried, and a few stood frozen, unable to move. The elders gathered near the altar, whispering sharply, their faces pale. Pastor Maliko stepped back, his robe suddenly heavy on his shoulders, his breath short and uneven. The respect that once wrapped around him like a crown began to slip. Outside, Amahle's pain grew stronger. Her body shook as another contraction tore through her. The women around her looked at one another in fear. "She is too early," one said. "We must take her to the clinic." But the clinic was far, and Amahle could barely stand. Sweat poured down her face as she cried out, her hands clawing at the earth. The baby inside her pushed hard, as if demanding to enter a world that had already judged it. Kofi pushed through the church doors and knelt beside her. His voice cut through the panic like calm water. "Clear space," he said. "Let her breathe." Some obeyed without thinking. Others hesitated, then followed. The same people who had once turned away now watched with wide eyes, unsure of what to do. Inside the church, an elder raised his voice. "We must hear the truth," he said. If we ignore this, we destroy ourselves. Pastor Maliko shook his head violently. This is a trap, he said. That man is cursed. That woman is cursed. The elder stepped closer. Or perhaps the curse is pride, he replied. Outside, Amahle screamed as another wave of pain hit her. Kofi held her shoulders, steady and firm. Look at me, he said. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. Amahle clung to his words like a rope. The women around them whispered prayers, some Christian, some old village prayers passed down from mothers to daughters. Life and tradition mixed in the dust. Inside the church, the elders searched through old records, receipts, and ledgers. The paper Kofi had shown was real. More truths began to surface. A young deacon fell to his knees, confessing he had delivered money and messages meant to silence Amahle. Another woman stood up crying, saying she too had been chased away years ago for similar reasons. Each confession struck Pastor Maliko like a blow. His power drained as fear filled his eyes. I did this for the church, he cried. For its name. For yourself, someone shouted back. Outside, Amahle's body pushed with everything it had. Her cry split the air, raw and powerful. Then, suddenly, a new sound rose, small but fierce. A baby's cry. The crowd fell silent. A woman lifted the newborn, covered in blood and life. It is a girl, she announced, her voice trembling. Amahle collapsed back, tears streaming down her face, her hands reaching for her child. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's skin, warm and alive. At that moment, something broke in the village. Inside the church, Pastor Maliko dropped to his knees. His robe spread around him like a fallen flag. Forgive me, he whispered, but his words sounded empty, spoken too late. The elders stood tall now. You will step down, one said firmly. You will answer for what you have done. People who once bowed their heads before Maliko now looked at him with disappointment and anger. The man who forced shame on others was now drowning in it himself. Outside, Kofi placed the baby gently in Amahle's arms. Life has spoken, he said softly. Amahle looked at him with gratitude and wonder. You saved us, she whispered. Kofi shook his head. Truth saved you, he replied. I only refused to look away. The villagers gathered around Amahle, drawn by the newborn's cry. Some women knelt, asking forgiveness. Others brought cloth, water, and food. Children stared in silence, sensing something sacred had happened. The church bell rang once more, but this time, no one moved toward it. All eyes were on the mother and child resting on the ground. If you are still listening, stay with us. The final chapter will reveal who Kofi truly is and how this village is changed forever. Subscribe and remain till the end, because the last breath of this story carries its greatest surprise and its deepest lesson. Under the open sky, life had arrived, and with it, judgment, mercy, and the beginning of something new. The morning after the storm felt different in Ndlovu. The air was softer, as if the land itself had breathed out a long-held pain. Birds sang without fear, and the sun rose slowly, touching the huts and trees with gentle light. People moved quietly, speaking in low voices, still carrying the weight of what had happened the day before. Amahle lay inside a small hut near the river, resting on a woven mat. Her daughter slept against her chest, warm and peaceful. Women from the village came and went, bringing porridge, clean cloth, and water. Some of these women had once turned their backs on her. Now they avoided her eyes, ashamed but willing to help. Amahle did not push them away. Her heart felt full, tired, and strangely calm. Kofi sat outside the hut, watching the river flow. Children gathered near him, no longer afraid. One child asked, "Grandfather, why do you live alone?" Kofi smiled gently. So I can hear the truth when it speaks, he replied. Inside the church, the elders met under the old roof. Pastor Maliko was not there. His house stood quiet, his fine car untouched. Word had spread quickly. His title was taken, his voice silenced, and he was ordered to face judgment before the council beyond the village. The power that once protected him had vanished like mist under the sun. Later that day, the elders called the village together under the big baobab tree. Men, women, and children gathered, waiting. Kofi stood among them, silent as always. Amahle came slowly, holding her baby. When people saw her, the crowd parted, making space. An elder stepped forward. We have been blind, he said. We allowed pride to sit where compassion should have lived. We chased the weak and praised the powerful. He turned to Kofi. This man warned us long ago. The crowd murmured. Kofi lifted his head. I did not come to be praised, he said. I came because silence kills. Then the elder spoke the truth that shocked many. Kofi was once called Teacher Kofi. He helped build our school and this very church. He walked away when lies took its place. Gasps moved through the crowd. People looked at Kofi with new eyes, eyes filled with regret. Amahle's breath caught. The homeless man who slept under trees was the same man whose hands built the walls that rejected her. Kofi continued, his voice steady. I chose the ground so I would never stand above another soul. Power bends people. Thus keeps us equal. The elders bowed their heads. We ask you to guide us again, one said. Kofi shook his head. Do not follow me, he replied. Follow truth. Build a place where no woman is shamed, where no child is born into fear. Amahle stepped forward, her baby stirring softly. I was pushed out, she said, her voice clear. But I was not destroyed. This child is not shame. She is life. Tears filled many eyes. The church was changed. Its doors were opened wide. The first gathering after the fall was held under the sky, not inside walls. Amahle sat among them, respected, supported, and safe. The baby was named Zoe, meaning beautiful. Kofi returned to the riverbank that evening. Amahle followed him. Where will you go? She asked. I will stay where I am needed, he said. Sometimes that is the road. Sometimes it is the silence between words. She held Zoe up gently. You gave us a future. Kofi smiled. You carried it yourself. As the sun set, the village felt whole again, though scars remained. But scars, like stories, remind us where healing began. If this story touched your heart, do not keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel, like, share, and stay with us till the end of every tale, because African stories carry lessons meant to be passed from one soul to another. The moral is simple and strong: faith without compassion is empty, power without truth is dangerous, and the greatest light often rises from the place we refuse to see. And so the land remembered, the people learned, and the truth walked freely again.